Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Hopefully a couple more folks will filter in, but I want to first of all welcome you to Data Innovation with National Australia Bank, sponsored by Fivetran. So first of all, I'm Taylor Brown, co-founder and chief operating officer at Fivetran. Okay, so before we dive in to hear more about all of that, I just want to give a quick shout out to who and what Fivetran is. So Fivetran is the global leader for data movement, helping companies with Gen AI, with AI applications, predictive analytics, and we basically pull data from 500 plus sources and load it into a cloud data platform such as Databricks in a scalable and automated way. And excited to be here today. So I guess with that, Joe, maybe let's just start, for those of you who don't know National Australia Bank, there's 10 million plus, banking customers that you have, commercial, lender customers that you all have in Australia, and I think globally. Can you tell us just like a little bit more about the organization and how you focus on giving the best customer experience possible?
Yeah, sure. Now, do we have any National Australia Bank customers in the audience today? Yay! Thanks from the Aussie cohort. Well, maybe we'll have some more after this presentation, who knows. So it's a large and complex business. We've been in business for a really long time as well, which means, we've got a lot of data to work with. We've got a lot of historical data to work with. And it's a critical resource. Data just, permeates every single process and type of service that we need to provide for our customers. So, data at NAB is such a great area to work in because it's just so important that we get it right, and it underpins, all of our relationships that we have with our customers. And of course, you can't be a relationship-led bank unless all of the tech that you have works really well. And a lot of the, the strategies that the business units have in terms of their engagement with customers and new products and giving excellent customer service every day, it all relies on the, the data that we provide out of our data platforms, and of course some of the insights that we rely on day to day. We have to have high quality data. It has to be very low latency. And, we believe that data is just so fundamental to the way that we provide great customer service that it needs to be like electricity. It needs to be always on. It needs to be high quality. Should be able to use it safely. And it's almost like we shouldn't even give it a second thought. We should be able to take it for granted. Mm-hmm. So data like electricity is actually the, one of the keystones of our data strategy at NAB.
So I think everyone would like to be at the cutting edge of technology, and everyone would like, especially in financial services, to have access to data as simple and easy as electricity. But I would say a lot of them don't. So like you all, as part of your strategy, have invested heavily in technology, and you're very, very good at it. I think oftentimes you hear financial services and you hear technology leader, and oftentimes these don't go together. A lot of our other financial services customers, unfortunately, aren't quite at the same cutting edge like you are. What drove you to decide, what was the strategy behind being at the cutting edge of technology?
Yeah, well, I guess at the heart of it, NAB is cloud native and engineering led. So with those foundations, it provides you with a really great basis for adopting emerging technology as it comes up. That doesn't mean to say that we don't have a lot of legacy technology and very outdated and old systems as well. But with every opportunity that we have where, we're decreasing our tech debt, we're decommissioning our older systems. Just one example of that is we managed last year, after a lot of work and a few sleepless nights here and there as well, we managed to decommission a 26-year-old Teradata platform, and most of you probably know, how intrinsic Teradata has been for financial services over the years. It's provided immense value and it's deeply ingrained, in a lot of the marketing and credit card operations that we had. But after 26 years, it's not just 26 years of IP, it's 26 years of custom code, not a lot of documentation, and so it was a really difficult effort to try and understand exactly the nature and the context of the data and how that system was working. But the move over to adopting a Fivetran set of technologies and using Databricks for our data lakehouse has really helped us transform everything and given us confidence to move ahead with the data strategy. One of the things that is a really big change for us is moving away from file-based ingestion and using change data capture to process deltas rather than whole copies of very large source system databases. And so the couple of benefits that arise from that approach are certainly around the volume of data that you need to store. So we're seeing reduced costs in terms of cloud and processing and storage costs. But also once the source system owners, the people who run all of our business and transaction and customer systems, realise that the Fivetran tech, it's just one more session on their system, and they see that it has no performance impact really, and it alleviates them from that kind of batch schedule hell that some of us are in, and I feel it every day, where the source system owners are having to extract files very late in the day or in fact overnight, and that means that their operational teams have to be very attentive during the night to make sure that those massive files that they're extracting and sending over to the data lake and the data warehouse arrive intact. So when they realise they don't have to do that anymore because the Fivetran tools hook onto their systems and it just trickles through during the day and overnight, it's a great relief to them. And once that penny drops, things go a lot more smoothly. So yeah, that's some of the ways that using emerging technology is making a big difference.
I love that. So that brings up sort of two more questions here. I think maybe the first one is a clarification. So before you had all these different systems that were doing sort of nightly jobs, and it sounds like they're doing snapshots and they were loading it into Teradata. And as a part of that, you're loading a tremendous amount of data and duplicate data every single day, loading it into Teradata. And that's running at like 2 a.m. And if it breaks, like it has to be done by 4 a.m. or something in order for the next day's jobs to run. And so like that process, I think people got really used to it. What Fivetran is doing is instead of doing that, we're replicating off the database CDC, where we're doing change data capture as it comes and loading that directly into Databricks. And so you don't end up with this like single point of failure every night, and you don't end up with a lot of duplication because it's only the change data. Is that right? That's sort of like the breakdown.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. And look, it's not to say that we still don't have our fair share of batch schedules, but we're removing them bit by bit, and we're migrating most of the workflows, time and time again over onto the Fivetran technology, bit by bit. I think the thing is, even if there is a service interruption upstream on one of the source systems that we're loading, because we're reading the logs, we're not scraping the entire database to extract files, it's a lot easier to catch up. So if there's a system outage upstream, we just wait until that system's recovered, and then we restart our Fivetran session, and then the data will just burst through and catch up pretty quickly. And that means that everything is still intact with good integrity. All of the referential integrity is just flowing through, and we catch up pretty quickly when we can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, the log technology that we're using is essentially like if we were going to have a read replica on the database, we're pretending like we're a read replica. And so it's essentially designed for this exact purpose. In our discussions prior to this, you mentioned a celebration that you had at the end of life of your Teradata instance. I thought that was a fun moment. Wanted to hear both a celebration and also like a thank you to the Teradata team, I assume.
Yeah. So look, culture and relationships are really, really important, and they're the things that propel our progress. Is when all of your teams are on board and they believe in the vision and all of that kind of thing. And I think one of the things that has been really interesting in this whole transition to Fivetran and Databricks is that we have a lot of team members that are really deeply connected with the heritage of our existing systems, and they find it really confronting to move on. It was almost like a shock to them when we said that we were going to change technologies. And, these are the people that we're relying on to do really big, important things like decommission Teradata and some of the other, historical systems that we have. So I think one of the most exciting things that we did was, when we were ready to turn off the physical system and actually power down my boss who's here today came up with this great, I think he should be a marketing person rather than an IT guy. But he came up with this idea. We had a film crew go down to the data centre and we live streamed the shutting down of Teradata, and we thought that there was one and we would just pull the plug and it would be, the balloons would go up, but in fact there were 5 separate cabinets, so it played out for a while. But yeah, the team leads that did that were in the data centre on the day, and the data centre protector was, there in all of his kit, and he would go behind the platform, behind the cabinet, one cabinet at a time, and said, now we're going to turn off cabinet number 1, and he turned it off, and you could see this kind of eye blinking at the front, and then suddenly the power would go out and the light would die. It was kind of like watching the Terminator die 5 times in a row. But like thousands, it was incredible. I was actually surprised at the excitement that generated, and thousands of people who were kind of on the periphery of the project actually tuned in and watched that live stream, and it was a really exciting time and a great way to just sometimes you can tell people about the journey and you can assure them that it's all going to work, and you can try and convince them to just trust in the process, and things will flow through. But sometimes you actually have to show them. There's that great scene in the rerun of Top Gun where Tom Cruise has to actually get in the plane and show his team that this thing's possible, because they won't believe that it's actually possible, this mission that they're going to do. And it was a bit like that. Like once we actually powered down that thing, I think that was a big signal to the entire organisation actually that we were going to follow through on our promises, and it helped build that trust and excitement in the program.
That's awesome. It's just like a great way to sort of capstone the change around this, because I think oftentimes these projects will extend past when they should, and they sort of dribble on, and it's like, hey, this is actually done, we followed through. We talked a little bit about why Fivetran is better than what you were doing before with Snapshots. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to transition from Teradata to Databricks? A little bit more about why you picked Databricks.
Yeah. Look, I think like many organisations who've been in business for a long time, you have a different mix of technologies, and they build up over time, and you accumulate different platforms. I think the situation that we were in was that we had a mix of open source tools, proprietary tools. We had a lot of data that was duplicated across many different systems, but nowhere had all of the data. So when that happens, it's quite complex, because you have different pockets of subject matter expertise, and you have different pockets of operational expertise as well. And over time, that complexity can really overwhelm you, and the costs can start to build up. Certainly the business was starting to experience lots of outages and incidents that were really having an impact on not only their own teams, but on our customer service. And we certainly weren't, meeting expectations in terms of, the level of support that our teams needed. So that's when, we really went after the strategy to simplify the data and analytics architecture, and, head for a lot more simplified and unified approach. So bit by bit, we're turning off all of those systems, and we're not actually doing a migration of all of the data and models. We're actually doing a greenfield approach where we're loading everything from scratch straight out of the source systems into Databricks, and we're building brand new, a brand new series of layers. We've gone from, for example, one of the we call them heritage platforms that we have. One of the platforms that we have has 9 different layers in the architecture, and we're going with medallion architecture in Databricks, which is all of the bronze layer has the raw data that we're ingesting, and then we have a silver layer which conforms all of the data into a single set of tables, and we're using a brand new approach to that. We're using an industry reference model to drive consistency, and then we have a gold layer where the business meaning comes to life, and you might be modelling star schemas, facts and dimensions, or in fact nice great big fat wide feature tables for machine learning and reuse on that side. So it's a simplified approach, but it's very much unified, all into the single system. And, we all know that data, if you do it well, data is an inexhaustible resource. You can use it over and over and over again. So if you build it and load it once, you've really set yourself up for success with reuse across, digital pipelines, traditional BI, regulatory reporting, but also the platform you need for machine learning. And for us, it's the springboard for enabling all of the exciting Gen AI use cases that we're pursuing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly get to those. I think so. It sort of sounds like you're a bit on your heels. The system wasn't necessarily supporting the business, and you probably weren't doing anything that proactive with the data that you had because you're probably just trying to get the system to continue to work on top of Teradata. So you shifted to using Fivetran and Databricks, and you have this visionary project called Project Ada. And I think maybe you can talk a little bit about that, where you're pulling over 250 siloed data sources into centralized within Databricks. This is, I think, the sort of stack that we have, or that you have. Can you talk a little bit more about that and maybe some of the challenges that you've faced in Project Ada? Like, what is Project Ada? Why did you name it Project Ada?
Oh, okay. So
I always wonder about project names.
Yeah, sure. So look, it's actually the system name, I guess, rather than the project name. So it's named after Ada Lovelace, Lord Byron's niece, who's one of the first recognised computer programmers in the world. So it's actually a woman's name. It's not not an acronym. Because, if you name something an acronym, someone will find some way to sledge it, to have, it meaning something else that's derogatory or whatever. That's a great way of anchoring ourselves on the new system name is Ada. So we've loaded, in 1 year, we've loaded 80 systems. We're already partway through our second year. We're already up to 120 systems. We're heading for what will be more than 200. Some of the challenges that we've had are certainly around actually just building the platform while we're trying to do all of that ingestion. We've had a lot to learn. We've had challenges around changing the mindset of our engineers to be more using, I guess, out-of-the-box approaches. If you ask a data engineer about a particular problem, they'll say, "Oh, that's a platform defect," and I'll start writing code to fix it up. But if you ask a platform engineer about the same issue, they might see it as a data quality issue, and they'll start coding around it to try and fix it up. And of course, the data modelers are always on a journey to work out how to model the best thing. So one of the things that has been challenging is just really just stopping coding and starting to configure things, because we want to keep things as elegant and as simple and as modular as we can. And every team that does something a little bit special or chooses their own way of doing it with their own code undermines those principles. So that's one of the challenges that we've had. I guess the other challenge is because we've been in business for so long, and we do have older systems. Some of the knowledge of these systems has dissipated. There's hardly anyone in the bank that actually knows what's inside some of these databases. Even the application teams that run them, they might not have a data dictionary, and what's in their databases might even be a little bit of a mystery to them, if you can imagine that. So we're building a new metadata repository within Unity Catalog, which is one of the amazing capabilities that Databricks has. And I would say it's probably the first time that we've had these 250 systems with all of their business metadata and the technical metadata documented in one place. So we have the data classification, the business descriptions, the format of each attribute, and that it's all in one place. So it means you've got data lineage, you've got data classification. It helps the user community as well as the developers really understand the nature of the context and the data lineage of what they're working with. And not only that, but it enables fine-grained user access, and it automatically masks any of the data which is really sensitive. So that's remarkable.
Yeah.
Working out how to deploy that and how to get that running and everything has been a little bit of a challenge in the beginning because you've got to integrate it with all of the different layers. But certainly a very strong way to support data governance as well as discoverability and usability on the user side as well.
I bet. I mean, I can only imagine. You centralize all this data, but then what, right? It's like having a well-organized, clearly defined, and then the access controls like in place all on top of that, then allows this more like self-service free access that folks can then use. So maybe we can talk a little bit about like what are the benefits that your team, the company at large, because I know you support the broader company, and also your customers. Like what are they seeing so far from this modernization effort on data?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of use cases there, financial crime and customer journey. These are some of the hero moments that we have. So when we were starting off to do the program, we really wanted to make sure it was business-led, not tech-led. Mm-hmm. We're doing it with the business for the business. We're not doing it to the business. And that mindset is something that, we really need to promote and make sure that the business is really leading the way with the priorities. How we execute on it is up to us, but the business has to set the priorities. And so the couple of use cases that we prioritised, it really allowed us to draw together all of the real core data in the organisation that spans the entire breadth and depth of the business. It's used again and again by most people. And in doing that, it also helped us learn about how to operate the platform and the different capabilities that we were going to be using. The early results very compelling. So within the first year, we've seen ingestion costs fall by about 50%. We've certainly seen a lot of the cloud storage decrease compared to previous approaches that we've used because it's a low copy architecture. Mm-hmm. So we're storing it once but using it many times. And, the other benefits on the user side, which is, this is all for the business teams that are, and analytics and reporting teams that are using the platform, is that it's certainly easy to use because we've got all of the metadata there. But in fact, the performance is really good. We see a 30% increase in the performance of machine learning models, as well as just ad hoc queries that are written in SQL. And in some cases, it's much, much faster than that as well. So the benefits are certainly starting to accrue. In terms of Gen AI, we've got some, really great use cases that we're using Databricks, as the launch pad and the strategic technology choice to be the gateway for a lot of these. So we've got a chat assistant for our bankers. We're doing tone of voice alignment. So we're using Gen AI to prompt changes to campaigns and communication to further align to NAB's tone of voice. Personalising communication depending on each customer's actual personality type. And we've got a great one around trust deeds. We process 15,000 trust deeds, a year. And I don't know about anyone here, but one trust deed, I'm sure, looks exactly the same as the next one to me. But not to a lawyer, and definitely not to Gen AI. So, every pixel is precious, every word is worth it, and no document is left behind with Gen AI. So it means the review and the prompts that come out of these trust deed reviews by the Gen AI tool is cutting the cycle time down from about 45 minutes per review down to about 5 minutes. And that's really starting to quicken up the rate that we can respond to, customers that need that advice.
So we've talked a lot about the technology, but how do you get, and you talked about some of the challenges in the change management of getting people to move from the old to the new. I think whenever you bring new things to the company at large, it's very easy for folks to just not trust it, particularly around data. Like how did you mentioned something about multiple kangaroos in our conversation yesterday. I'm curious, how did you get people to a trusted state with what you were producing and getting them to actually lean into this and ask for more and be great partners for you?
Yeah, so, one of the things that we have learned through doing that Teradata decommissioning is that some of it went really smoothly, and the results that we were getting out of the starting from scratch greenfield ingestion were flawless, and they exactly equaled what the business was expecting. But there was one area to do with credit cards that we didn't really have the proof of the pudding, which is whether all of the reports and the models and everything else was going to be exactly equal to what was previously on Teradata. And that was a real learning for us. I think we needed many, many more people involved for a much longer time to do business validation testing, user acceptance testing, so that we could finely tune some of the semantic layer and how the data was being manipulated on the very end. But one of the ways that we do build trust is we are very transparent. So we have the overall ingestion plan for the 200 or so sources on the bank's intranet, and it's really easy to access. Anyone can come and have a look at it. And we publish exactly where we're up to on every single source ingestion and when it's going to land. So that's all, internally available to anyone working in the business. And then the other thing we do is we make sure that we're really proactive about the standards that we're building for. We don't sort of dump everything in and then, if there's an issue with it, we go back and try and fix it. What we do is we have these 5 standards that we proactively put in place. So we have to have really good business requirements. We have to have complete metadata. We have to have the bronze ingestion running in a very stable way, all reconciled back to source. And then we also have to make sure that everything's integrated and aligned to the industry reference model in our silver layer. And then before we claim victory and move on to the next set of data loads, we have to make sure that we've cleared hypercare and that all of the pipelines are really stable. And we call these the 5 kangaroos. So every source system, before it's finished and we say that we're done and we move on to the next set, it has to meet these 5 kangaroo standards. And we have a dashboard and it's got the 5 kangaroos on it. It's on the bank's intranet, and you can actually click in through each one and see who signed off on the requirements, who ran the test report, where is the test report, how were the test results run, and all of the screenshots to say this thing ran 14 days straight after we loaded it in with no interruption, and that the pipelines are stable and that we were able to exit hypercare, which is great because it's very transparent. Anyone can come and have a look at it. It's actually great for our own teams because they can track if they're dependent on any loads to finish, ahead of when they start their work. That's all there for them as well. And the auditors absolutely love it because it's all self-serve and it's right there and they can grab anything anytime they want. And even all of the metadata is there as well. So I think that's been one way that we've really gained trust, not just with our own team, but our stakeholders and our user community as well.
So it sounds like a lot of transparency and also just following through. Hey, we're doing this project, it's gonna be done by this time, and then it's done, and you have a celebration, and people start to trust that the things you say you're going to do are actually going to get done.
Exactly.
And they can rely on that. So maybe 2 more questions. So we've talked a little bit about culture. I think when I often think about banking culture, it is more reserved. It's more focused on reducing risk, and it's not necessarily at the cutting edge. And I think where I see NAB is really both at a top tier bank, and at the same time, the best bank in Australia, and at the same time, at the cutting edge of technology that I would say even a lot of startups aren't even close to. So how do you foster the right culture that allows you to push the limits from a technology perspective, but also is able to continue to manage the risk side as well?
Yeah. It's a constant struggle. So if really big banks want to go really, really fast, they better have really good brakes. So security and governance and risk management is just so important. I always talk about my role as having 4 faces. Number 1, you have to be a steward of the organisation's information, right? So you have to be a steward. You have to be a good operator, so you have to get stuff done. You have to operate systems, make sure everything's up and running and it's well controlled. You have to be a great strategist as well, so always looking forward to the next couple of years about what you're going to have to solve now to enable what you want to do in the coming years, and then also be a catalyst for change. And we've talked a little bit about how to lead your teams through change and some of the techniques that we've used. When it comes to being a steward, though, that's table stakes. If you can't protect your customers' information, then you really shouldn't be doing anything else. We just do so much work on a daily and a weekly basis to make sure that we're remaining up to date with patches and security vulnerabilities. And I think one of the things in simplifying your technology architecture is that you've just got one system that you really have to concentrate on rather than 6 or 7. So that's another benefit of simplification. But yeah, it's like sometimes it's like an arms race. We come in one day and we think we've patched everything, it's all great, and then another lot of vulnerabilities come through that you're working with the security team on making sure you're patched. So yeah, governance and stewardship and security is always like the number one thing we concentrate on before we move on to enabling all of the exciting stuff that the business wants to do.
The table stakes stuff. So actually I do have maybe 2 more questions. So in terms of, we talked a little bit about AI and some of the projects you're working on, like where do you see the industry, particularly in financial services going? How do you, around AI, how do you see AI potentially helping customer experience or otherwise for that sector?
Yeah, look, I think I hear again and again that we need a human in the loop. NAB is a relationship-based bank. And so, you don't build great relationships if your tech is terrible and it's always falling over, right? So, great relationships only get you so far. So you do have to be excellent at technology. But with Gen AI in particular, I think you're trying to manage the actual risks versus the perceived risks. So you have to manage both. And that means really good stakeholder engagement and governance and transparency to make sure you're taking care of the perceived risks. But there are a lot of actual risks with things like hallucinations and certainly security and privacy as well. So we have a human in the loop, and I do think that having a human in the loop and really using Gen AI almost, especially in these early days, more in a co-pilot mode. So, the Gen AI might be simplifying a view or summarising something or suggesting changes, but the person, who is overseeing that and making the actual final decision is really important. So, yeah, for the next couple of years, I think this area is going to be a very interesting one to watch, and there'll be lots of companies that, have amazing successes, but I'm sure there'll be a few casualties along the way and some really serious lessons to learn. So, yeah, we have a very careful approach. Our CEO and our group executives at that very top level of the company are really deeply invested in what we're doing with Gen AI, and they are the actual sponsors of each of the initiatives that we're doing. So again, having that business sponsorship and being business-led, I think that can help us not get too far ahead of ourselves and get too excited and offer that extra level of oversight and governance that we need with Gen AI.
That's great advice. So I guess really final question, what recommendation do you have for the other data leaders out here in terms of their journey, potentially going through what you've just gone through, or what advice would you give them to be successful using their data?
Yeah, look, I think the 4 principles that I constantly come back to is making sure that it is business-led. It's not just a frivolous or an exciting, indulgent technology pursuit, and that the business is in the driver's seat, and that the business is setting the priorities while we're doing all of the architecture and the implementation and the execution approach more in the background. Any change activity, particularly the one that we've been through, you have to really focus on change management and communication, but particularly with your own teams. And you have to reward success when something amazing has been done, but encouraging, to users, you're paying a lot of money for amazing technology, and making that change from custom coding and constantly engineering code more towards an out-of-the-box approach. I would really highly recommend that because it does simplify things. And then the 4th one is not lose sight of the fact that you do have to concentrate on risk management and not concentrating on all the fancy stuff at the bleeding edge, but just getting the basics right in how you governing and controlling stuff. And then also just in terms of trust, being really open and transparent, talking about the things that are really, really hard, like, the fact that no one knows what data is in a database, no one has the metadata, we're starting from scratch. Some of these systems that we've had to deal with have had 27,000 attributes in them. Not that we use them all, but they're third parties, right? Yeah. So just, explaining where the challenges are, but being really, really open and transparent about where you're up to and what progress you're making, and celebrating success, I think, is a really great thing to focus on as well.
Yeah, I love that story. I appreciate everyone listening today, and Joe, really appreciate your partnership.
Yeah,
Thank
sure
you.
thing.
Yeah.